Welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Anna is the founder of Ground Control Research, where she helps brands and their agencies replace assumptions with insights that fuel marketing strategy. Anna, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Raul. Glad to be here.
So, actionable insights for challenger brands. It's like a David Goliath situation, right?
You know, I'm always the fan of the underdog. So
Yeah.
when I started my company 9 years ago, I had a lot of opportunity, just like everyone does. Who do you want to work with? And I didn't want to work with the big dogs. I wanted to work with the scrappy upstarts. And I come from the startup world before I started my firm. So I kind of have that DNA, that ethos within me. And that's who I'm working with now, 9 years later.
I love it in the game. When we look at data and we look at what we're doing in our marketing, what we're doing in our go-to-market, who we're talking to, who we're selling to, there's usually I'll give an analogy. When we're using either like Fin or customer support agents, like they get questions off the wazoo, they get 10,000 different inquiries, but they usually categorize them into different buckets, like 3 different buckets. Like a question might come in, and this is usually one of these 3 or 5. When you're working with brands and when you're working with companies, and we want to do all these things, market expansion, we want to make a new offer, we want to work with a new vertical, we want to go deeper, we want to go horizontal. There's 10,000 things that they want to do. So that's where the analogy plays in. But I'm pretty sure there's only like 5 or 3 options of what they can do based on all the things that they want to do. How do you help them decipher that? And what are some of the options that are realistically in front of all of us right now?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I do think what most folks that I work with tend to get really excited about and get into first is sort of like the infinite ideas and possibilities of execution around something. But what I'm trying to help them do is, before we decide officially what we're going to execute out of that 10,000 list of things, what are those, again, the core territories of what you can do with a business, right? So the first thing you can do is you can keep the target market that you have and the services that you have and just get better at communicating to that market. The next thing you can do is keep the market that you have and launch another offering to that market that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Another thing you could do is take the offers that you have right now and launch them to a new market, an adjacent market, hopefully, to some market you've been serving, right? And then something else you could do, which is kind of challenging, but people do pull this off. There's usually some revenue cash flow issues if you just try to do this too quickly, but you can try to launch a new thing, a new offer to a totally new market. And so those are sort of those 4 things are sort of what most business owners are doing, founders are doing with their marketing strategy.
Oh yeah, marketing and sales go to market. And I like how you've identified that, because each one stems off for a higher level of risk and a higher level of payoff. Obviously, the first one's the easiest. Well, not everything is easy. It's simple. But I also like new offers to existing market, or even to new market. And sometimes those can be like peripherals or peripheral offerings that you already have. And just as a side note, that's what I've seen with clients and even in my own business, that there's one out of what, let's say you have 12 deliverables or 12 things you do, there's one thing that is unique that you share that to another market. It's like, oh, that's really, really interesting. That's actually more valuable over here than you just do that one thing to the new market. But you don't usually do that strategically. We usually stumble upon that just by networking or chatting with people. You help them, like the founders that you work with, do that strategically. Walk me through the process.
Yeah. So usually what's happened already is what you just described. Someone has stumbled into this. Either they had, a prospect come in and they ended up selling to them, even though they weren't in the same, industry that they were targeting, or there's some sort of, something unique like that happened, right? And at some point someone says, wait a minute, should we be doing this for real? Like, should we just now go and actually form some strategy and some campaigns and some execution around doing this for real, like this new offer to the same market, or this same offer to a new market, or something like that? At that time, teams, founders are really at a crossroads of, how am I going to approach this? What I see often, and it's not, and I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that this is a wrong approach, but this is just a different approach than mine. What I see often is folks will go, oh, okay, well, it happened one time already, right? I already had this conversation. I'm just going to do it, and then I'll figure the rest out later, right? And I'm fully I'm very, very, a heck yes for them to go and do that for the first 4 or 5 sales, right? Because that's going to prove and do some scrappy stuff to just prove that there is demand there in the market. But where I sort of come in is to say, okay, well, you already proved that there was a bit of demand, or you already proved that there's a business case, let's just say, to to actually
Mhm.
explore this. Before you invest the next, let's say, 50,000, $100,000, whatever that budget might be, into building something out and putting stuff out there in marketing, why don't we make sure we really, really foundationally understand who it is you're selling to and what it is you're selling and what is the language and the positioning that you need to have in order to do that very effectively. And for me to help someone with
Yeah.
that, my approach is all about understanding the market and then applying what you learn to filling in those gaps.
That's key. So there's a few things here. So it's not just market expansion or offer expansion, but there is either horizontal or vertical, deeper in the market or new moving to new market. How do you really cross? And this is the chasm you're crossing. We're so busy for insights and research. Like, how do we make it as part of the habit of the organization versus this thing that we have to do?
So the first thing that we always do with clients is make it simple, make it much simpler. I think everyone in their head, especially in a B2B context, people are like, well, I have to talk to 100 people or I got to talk to 1,000 customers or something. Honestly,
Yeah.
what you really need to do in order to get enough thematic evidence to start moving is talk to like 3 to 5 people in the target market with the right
Yeah.
kinds of questions. So if we can reduce the size of the exercise down, then
Mhm.
we're able to get some traction and get some movement faster. And then we'll continue to fill that in with additional, interviewing or other methodologies over time. But really, we're focused on just getting a handful of conversations going. And usually we can get that done in like a week or two.
Wow. So I like the speed to it. And also now with deep research, I had a gentleman on the podcast a while ago. He's a revenue guy. And we talked about this number, like how many people do you need to talk to? The number that I came to was that around the 17th person of the 17th interview, you usually are going to have a high confidence score. What the 18th and the 19th are. And if you can, then you're done. And he found that it was around 12 to 15 as well. But here you're just saying 3 to 4 to get started, I think now, because there's data up the wazoo, and then we can actually capture that data easier now with the call recorders, the AI transcriptions, the summaries, and the deep research. We probably go
Yeah.
faster.
And again, like what we're trying to do, if we're actually trying to build with speed and we're trying to scale with speed, is we're trying to get more insight than we had yesterday. And we're trying to build
Mhm.
based on the insight we have today, which is more than we had yesterday. So we want to start with like 3 to 5 conversations, and that gives us the thematic information we need. Plus, we already had like a few sales, right? Or some sort of
Yeah,
market signals. So that counts towards our sample size, if you will. So we want to bring all that
yeah.
together. But what I see too often is folks are like, well, I can't move forward until I get that 17th call or the 21st call or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to encourage folks to really think about how can I do actions in parallel while really just continuing to calibrate always around the truth. The truth being what I'm hearing in these calls, what I'm hearing in these market conversations, what I'm learning from like a deep research tool. But again, making sure you're I would just say like and we can talk more if you want about, where and when to use the AI tools, making sure that the first party conversations that you had are the most important thing that you're relying on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of the AIs are just there to please you. So they'll tell you what you wanna hear when you
Every
wanna hear
business
it,
model you throw in
sometimes.
front of an AI is the best business model it's ever heard of, just as a tip.
It's brilliant. It's like, yeah, it's like you wrote the AI.
Yeah.
Let's make this practical. So some of the clients that I'm working with and other prospective clients, like we're moving to a new vertical or we want to add an additional service to the existing line of business to increase profitability, LTV, the whole nine. There's multiple reasons why, or even to just to double the company. And I'm thinking of like a few case studies or like real people that are doing this right now. I mean, let's play tug of war here. Like in some cases, they're like, well, we should just offer this service because it seems like we could help them with that, but I don't know. Others are like, well, we already do this really, really well. Let's just sell this to another market that needs this because we can do it really, really well. How do we actually strategically think about that to avoid the pitfalls and maybe even share what are the crocodiles hanging under us if we don't do this right?
For sure. So I would just say the time that you invest in validating these two potential routes is very, very, very valuable time spent. And the pitfall is that folks kind of gloss over it or they they're very smart business people, and they're like, oh, if I just wrote a document that kind of articulates the different paths and I just choose one, like I'm good, right? And in reality, what I see work very well is when folks can write down or kind of structure out what they're considering and then go through a process where they invest a little bit more time in validating that path. Now, how do you validate that path? One is making sure you're talking to the right people that are actually a member of the market that you're considering or that you're currently in. Sometimes we might go for who's easiest for us to call, or we might go to a colleague or somebody like that.
Mm.
But we need to really truly vet that person's like LinkedIn profile versus what we've written down as our ICP and our buyer persona. Is it a fit for the call? If it's a fit, great. But making sure that we're actually talking to the right people. And then the next thing is, what is the information you're trying to learn in the call that's going to help you make this decision? One is, what are the pain points that the market tells you that they have? Again, not what you already have sort of observed from your current client interactions, because sometimes you're not actually getting insight and you don't actually see a lot of what their business problems actually are because you're just working on one part of it. So really understanding at that higher level, what are the problems that organization and that stakeholder has? And then two, what is the outcome that they want to have? If they could wave a magic wand,
Mm.
what would it be that they would change, or what would they see different, a year in the future, 6 months in the future? And then you also want to understand, what are they doing right now to explore solving this, or what are they doing right now to solve it, right? Like, no one just likes to sit with problems. Your markets are probably doing something. It may be ineffective, but they're doing something. Those three pieces of information allow you to really triangulate around a few things. One is, what is the right offer for me to deliver, and to whom, right? Some markets you talk to, they might have pain, but they're actually going to solve it themselves. And so there's no place for a solution. Some markets might be like, wow, I need a solution, but it's not that urgent. It's not that painful, right? So those are some of the things
Yeah.
you're learning, is like, is there a need for a solution? And then two is, if there is a need for a solution, what is the way I need to talk about it in the language of that market?
Yeah.
Because how I talk to accounting firms about my whatever B2B service that I offer them may be very different in the true like words that are used than talking to lawyers, for example. Even though it's the same solution I'm offering, it's the same problem I'm solving, I may need to have different language. And these kind of conversations that you use will help you understand that language.
Yeah, and it's also like the decision maker too. Like if you're talking to the
Mhm.
salesperson or the operator or the actual
Yeah.
CEO, completely different pitch stacks. Like it really depends on the audience too.
Mhm.
Um, do you also focus like on, and this is like a jaded term, but buyer's journey. When I define buyer's journey, I think you kind of alluded to it, is what are they currently doing? When does your service or solution become important? And what are the measurable things that matter, that you can measure in the market, that you have a higher likelihood of your services being valuable to them?
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, those are all very important things, and you're really trying to understand. I mean, this to me, these interviews are really ultimately about an act of empathy, where you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of your market or this potential market, and you're really trying to understand everything you possibly can about how they operate and function in the world that they live in right now. So anything you can get into about, what their decision-making process is, what their what the moments in the business or in the market are that are gonna trigger a need for your service, or a more likelihood to consider your service, or even indifference to what they're currently using as a solution, right? How can you kind of influence that? Those are all really important parts.
No, I like that. So we do the is that the only data source through interviews, or are there additional data sources that we should be looking at?
Yeah, so for me, it depends on the size of the organization, like how I recommend they implement this methodology. If they're on the more small, nimble side, I'd rather see them use interviews and then continue to layer in insights that might come from industry reports, that might come from, conferences. Some of the bigger players in their space are honestly probably investing 50, $100,000 or more into research projects that are being shared, publicly in some way. So that's a great place to get resources if you're still kind of in that small and scrappy phase. As organizations get bigger, there's a lot that they can do to gain this information through um, through other methodologies like a survey or like some sort of a, following, like shadowing someone, through their daily work
Mhm.
or things like that, right? But um, I'm always looking at what's the minimum effort and cost for the maximum reward. And in the B2B context, interviews seem to be pretty quick and easy.
Nice. Do you ever do like paid ads for survey? I remember listening to a founder when they were going to launch a new product. They just ran paid ads and then surveyed the market, and then from there analyze which ones were the most responsive, which angles and hooks. Do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, we've definitely done stuff like that with clients for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So paid ads is a mechanism, but it all comes back to user feedback.
Yeah.
Regard like
Yeah.
the main source of truth, user feedback, the angles of attack, talking to them,
Right.
surveying them, paid ads
Yeah.
to them,
What I'm always
emailing
saying to
them.
clients is like, you need to get in front of this X kind of person, right? So what is the
Yeah.
best way for you to do that? Is it going through your network? Usually that's fast because people are very connected
Just
in their
introductions.
industry,
Yeah.
right? But to be fair, when we have clients who are trying to do this big leap, which is new offer, new audience, we're going
Yeah.
usually outside of who they know, or it might be kind of these like third degree connections or something like that. And in that
Mhm.
case, like often there are tools that you can use. Like there's services like Bridger, and what they will do is like connect you with any sort of B2B audience member. It's a few $100s per interview, but they can get that done. You can call them on a Monday. You'll have calls on your calendar by like Thursday, Friday. So there's services out there
Wow.
too that can help you connect, with a particular market for a longer format interview, or even do surveys and stuff through them. But, the just surveys versus, an interview, for the type of information that you need to learn to successfully enable your marketing, a survey, it isn't always the right thing to do unless you've already done some interviews, because how would you know what answer
Yeah.
options to give to all the questions in the
Mhm.
survey? You wouldn't yet have that insight.
Yeah, you have to have the dialogue. You have to
Yeah.
see their reaction too.
Mhm.
Um, no, this is fascinating. So you have this quadrant. Like, do you have this as a quadrant? It sounds like it's a
Yeah.
quadrant.
Yeah.
Same market, same new product. Same market, new
Mhm.
product. New same product, new market, new,
Yeah.
and then the new is always like the
The new
hardest.
the
Okay,
new news, I try to
so
dissuade people honestly from going there because
why? Okay, let's go. Why?
yeah, because, like, I always need to dig into the reason behind that, right? And sometimes there is a valid reason, but a lot of times it can be
Yeah.
shiny object syndrome slash, like, really, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I had this random conversation when I was on vacation in the airport with this guy, and then, like, he wants to buy my thing and a new thing," and I get that, like, I'm
Yeah.
like that as a person, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
I wanna actually when I have a client that wants to do that, we need to really understand, what is the strategic basis for you making that decision? Is it that you have absolutely no revenue because your target market just disappeared overnight because of some market factor and your offer is
Mhm.
now no longer totally relevant? Okay, great. Now we're doing new. Um, we don't have another choice. But the ideal path would actually be, if you wanna end up with that new market, new offer, could we find a way to take a current offer to a new market, or could we find a way to take a new offer to the same market, and move our way around the quadrant? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That
So map it out
that's a
strategically.
better way like, it takes longer, but you make a lot more revenue in the process, and you have a lot less risk.
And I didn't even look. Do you have a book around that? Because that should be like the guide.
I should write that. That's a good idea.
No, seriously, that's
Yeah.
such a great. I mean, the guide to get to new. If you ever want to get to new.
Yeah. No, I use this thinking all the time, but I haven't put it into, like, a book format, so I would love to do that.
It needs to be like a journey or a roadmap or like a visual or like some sort of mind map or infographic, like traversing the path and depending on where you're at in revenue and your team size and the goals, because that's what I've seen in real life, like from my experience with the companies or the businesses and clients that I've worked with. It's tangent, like a splinter of their main offer is like, oh, we got to offer this thing now.
Mhm.
And that becomes the new offer. And that might be a distraction. Or I remember I talked to a guy out of not buying a company because, like, dude, this is a distraction because that market is not our ideal client.
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's
Yeah.
all these, uh, you got to write the book. I'll hold you accountable to it.
Okay, great. I'm ready.
Oh, well, you better just do it. No, that's really helpful. Is there anything that changes? You mentioned a like Bridger or one of the services, but as I traverse down this journey of market expansion or offer expansion, are there different tool sets, skill sets, activities that change, or is it typically the same across the board?
I would say the goal of this entire thing is to gain enough insight to get something that is going to be much better than it would have been otherwise into the market as fast as we possibly can. So, if what we want to do is explore over the course of 2 weeks a particular market to understand whether, let's just take the same market, new offer. Let's just do like several interviews over the course of a week with our current market, both customers and prospects. Let's learn from that. And again, I think the way you interpret that, one, the questions you ask need to be dialed in, and then the way you interpret that needs to be very precise and already agreed in advance how you're going to interpret it, so that we don't end up in this like boondoggle, like off in left field, now we should pivot to this other direction kind of a thing. Um,
Mhm.
Once you get that interpretation, my goal with clients is within 2 to 3 weeks of doing this, they're moving in the market with some sort of testing, right? So we're either testing ads, we're testing actual offers with the market, in sales
Mm.
calls. We're trying to actually close some deals, because the best evidence that there's viability is a sale, and actually like three.
Voting with your dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 3, 4, 5 sales, right? So if we're not able to get to a sale, then we need to look at why that's not working. Again, trying to break this into like 2 weeks of research, 2 weeks of marketing experiments of some sort and sales experiments, and then a week of kind of learning from that, iterating, and then moving into our next plan. That plan may be, well, we learned that the reason that people aren't buying is XYZ. So therefore we go back to our quadrant and we start to say, okay, well, is it a different offer? Is it a different audience? We kind of go back to that. Or if something is working, how do we make that work even better? And then how do we think about scaling that? So that's sort of the very iterative approach that I'm taking with clients.
The 6-week journey to market expansion.
Yeah.
There's the book.
There we go.
That's good. No, that's really helpful. So you condense the time, the activities change, but the whole goal is to get the real outcome. Can we sell this? Is the messaging working? Then there's
Right.
the obviously iterative approach.
Yeah.
But I really like framing this idea into simple quadrants because yeah, it's usually A to Z. People just go from A to
Yeah.
Z without doing these steps and
Yeah.
the effort and the insight. And I think the cost it sounds like it's a really like you can do like teams can do this. It's probably gonna be more expensive to fail at this and
Yeah.
to invest in doing this. You mentioned, and this we'll shift gears here, but you mentioned that in your own journey you valued or you benefited highly from self insight just as much as, and you value your self insight just as much or even more than market insight. Can you help elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. So some that I have noticed just being in the business of understanding humans, right? Like I come from a market research background, um, is
Mhm.
that I can understand someone else pretty easily, but sometimes it's hard to understand myself, or it was, before I made this into a practice, hard to understand myself. And I think I see this in clients all the time too, where let's say we get some insights back from, they went and talked
Mhm.
to a bunch of people, and my clients don't like what they heard. Like they just emotionally, they don't like what they
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
And I've been in that seat too for my own business, believe me, right? Like I didn't like what I heard. And what I've realized through my own journey around self-insight and what I try to bring to clients is when we don't like what we hear, we need to go inward and figure out why, right? Because there's
Mhm.
oftentimes something that's within us from our experiences or from how we see things, or a belief, or a behavior that we've been doing unconsciously, but that we get the opportunity to look at now that we've
Mhm.
had this experience of not feeling so great about something. Um, and that's, I think, a big part that's often missed in the process of marketing and in selling, is we're sort of pushing that stuff to the side, and we're focusing very much on like the numbers and the data and the sales and the leads and the tactics and the strategy. And in fact, figuring out how to grow one's own self-insight and then apply that, it creates a lot more opportunity for you as a person to just have a different experience, right?
And sometimes we get bogged down with the day-to-day activities and not slowing down to understand why. I think that's one of the critical things in my humble opinion, why communication is probably the most important skill set
Mhm.
in all humanity, like communicating with oneself, with others, and also here marketing. I mean, to make a sale, to make the business a revenue
Right.
chime, but That's very powerful, and I
Yeah,
think doing the inner work is going to radically transform the outer work regardless of what's going on, so I appreciate you sharing that. Anna, for our audience listening out there, what's the best place that people can thank you for being on it?
for sure. Folks can go to ana.bio, ana.bio. And on that site, there's all sorts of cool links for you to add me on LinkedIn, check out, our company, see all the other things I'm up to. And eventually, I think there's going to be a link to a book, Raul. Thank you for that. It'll be on ana.bio.
Don't come to the podcast if you don't wanna do work. Thanks, you. No, Anna, you've been awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll put all those links in the show notes. We'll take it from here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to get more of these podcasts, please go ahead and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to the pod. If you have any suggestions or questions that you want me to answer on the pod, or you have a guest that you want me to interview, please go ahead and email me all of your suggestions and questions at podcast@dogoodwork.io. That's podcast@dogoodwork.io. If you'd like to give me public feedback, you can go on Apple Podcasts, and from there, you can leave up to a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that. If you like more free resources where you can get my best strategies to help you increase your company's performance and scale profitably, you can get handpicked articles to propel your growth, and you can get trainings and discussions that I give freely online, as well as low-cost resources such as my books and guides. You can get all of that by going to dogoodwork.io/resources. 90% of all of these resources are not behind any email opt-ins. So you can get instant access by going to dogoodwork.io/resources. Now, if you'd like to accelerate your progress and shorten the gap between information and action and start seeing results in your business, let's work together to increase your company's performance and scale profitably and serve more clients without the overwhelm. You can request a free clarity call to see how we can best support you to reach your goals by going to dogoodwork.io/apply. Again, that's dogoodwork.io/apply. As always, it's an honor to be a small part in your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.